I can confirm your live streaming.
Thank you very much. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's special council meeting. Before we begin this meeting, I'd like to acknowledge that this afternoon we're gathering on the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples. We recognize our responsibility to serve as stewards for the land and honor the original caretakers who came before us. Our community is enriched by the enduring knowledge and deep-rooted traditions of the diverse First Nations, Métis, and Inuit in Kitchener today. Before we begin today's meeting, I'd be remiss if I didn't take a moment to acknowledge the tragic killing and injuries that occurred in Buffalo last night. Without question, I think all of us were shocked by the news because it's another example of a senseless act of violence upon racialized people. Without a question, the tragic events that occurred have particularly impacted African, Caribbean, and Black individuals in our community and, quite frankly, across the world. And it's incumbent on us to renew a call to end all racism as well as anti-immigrant rhetoric that is occurring, not just in the city of Buffalo, but quite frankly in so many jurisdictions, including in our own country and our own community. The reality is that hate has no home here or anywhere else in our community, or in our country, rather. I'd like to take a moment to have a moment of silence for those who were victims and their families at this time. Thank you. Oops. I'd now like to have someone move the motion. Just 1 second, my screen. Move the motion to go in camera to consider an item of solicitor-client privilege and a city negotiation strategy matter and one land acquisition disposition matter. Moved by Councillor Johnson, seconded by Councillor Michaud. Thank you. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Motion to, I guess, 3 readings of the bylaws, please.
Through Mr. Mayor?
Yep.
I'm sorry, we're going to have to, we are potentially going to need to rise and report. So if we do, it would be preferred to do the bylaws after that.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Thank you. So we'll just take a moment to recess then. Sorry, a motion to recess rather. Moved by Councillor Michaud, Councillor Schneider. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Live streaming.
Through Mr. Mayor, we are back live streaming.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, again, and thanks for your patience while we dealt with some items in camera. Madam Clerk, I understand there's one item coming out of in camera.
Through the Mayor to all of Council, that is correct. The resolution is on the screen.
Okay, thank you. Somebody care to move that? Sorry, Councillor Johnson, seconder. Sorry, Councillor Marsh, thank you. Any comments? Councillor Gazzola.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to make a statement that I will not be supporting what's coming before us. I am stated in caucus, as opposed to it during a discussion there, I think in this case, the developer is getting too good a deal at the cost of the rest of the community's taxpayers. I would like to have seen us go back and carry the discussion further. I know what's coming forward is a staff recommendation. I know members of council are not do not like going opposed to what our professional staff recommend. But I want to reiterate the point that staff are professionals and they do what they're supposed to do and they do it well. But then when a decision is made, it's up to council, because the buck stops with council. If it's the right decision, council gets the credit. If it's the wrong decision, council gets the blame. And so on this case, I think there was a strong enough feeling. It was a strong enough feeling that that we perhaps should be looking at this further, but with some last minute dramatics, it doesn't appear that we're going in that direction. So I'm opposed to it, and I would like a recorded vote.
Thank you, Councillor Gazzola, and I will come to a recorded vote at the appropriate time. Councillor Ioannidis, I believe you wanted to declare a conflict?
Yes, I do.
Okay, go ahead.
I want to declare it a conflict on, I'm not sure what the item is, what it's listed as, but
On the motion that's in front of us?
yes. I'm just
And-
trying to look at my notes now. But whatever that is,
You're declaring a conflict on the motion, the property matter, and your reason for the conflict, Councillor Ioannidis?
that for my other employment, through my other employment.
Okay, Councillor Ioannidis, if I can remind you to to fill out the appropriate paperwork afterwards, and we'll exclude you from the recorded vote. Any other comments? I will just comment on the discussion. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Singh.
Yeah, just for clarification, Mayor Vavenik, I think Councillor Ioannidis said declared the conflict on the earlier item in caucus, not the later one that we're making a vote on. You may want to get that clarity from him.
Councillor Ioannidis?
Is this the item dealing with city-owned lands?
Well, it is. Is it item number 1 or item number 2 in caucus?
Item number 2.
Okay, then this is the item that's referred to, Councillor Singh. Okay, Councillor Singh, do you have a further comment, or?
No, that's okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Just to make a comment in terms of this particular item, and I think what's from my perspective, what's important to remember in this particular instance is that the piece of land in question is a piece of land that was originally conveyed to the city of Kitchener as part of the development process, and it was conveyed to the city with no value attached to it. And it was conveyed for a particular purpose, which was the construction of a road, which is now not happening. And so the fact that our staff have been able to negotiate a value to a piece of property that originally came to us for free, and that we're no longer doing what we said we were going to do with it, it's incumbent that, yes, it's fair market value, but it's also that it's reasonable value considering the circumstances. It's not like this is an independent transaction with no other history to it. So with that, Councillor Ioannidis, you've raised your hand again.
Yeah, I just want to make clear, just trying to clear which item it is. I'm just going to my notes now. Geez. Okay,
we're live, Councillor Ioannidis. So Which item are you declaring the conflict on?
I'm just trying to go back to what was in caucus, which item is which, just to make sure. Um, I'm gonna leave the meeting because I can't find my notes this quick enough.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Ioannidis. But your caucus, your conflict is still noted on at this point based on what you've noted earlier. And if you need to make a correction, you'll have to do that at the next meeting. So with that, a recorded vote has been called on the motion that has been moved and seconded, and I'll start with Ward 1, Councillor Davey.
I'm opposed.
Ward 2, Councillor Schneider.
I'm opposed.
Ward 3, Councillor Gazzola.
Opposed?
Ward 4, Councillor Michaud.
In favor?
Ward 5, Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
In favor?
Ward 6, Councillor Singh.
I'm opposed.
Ward 7, there's a conflict. Ward 8, Councillor Johnson.
I'm in favor.
Ward 9, Councillor Chapman.
In favor.
Ward 10, Councillor Marsh.
In favor.
And I'm in favor, and so that carries on a vote of 6-4 with one noted conflict. Can I have someone move 3 readings, please? Councillor Johnson, Councillor Chapman, thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Davey, Councillor Schneider, thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And I think Councillor Galloway-Seelock, it's your meeting that's next. Do you want 5 minutes?
Yeah, let's take a 5-minute break.
Okay, thank you.
Are we staying on here? There's a different link for the meeting.
For you, Councillor Gazzola, the meeting will be the same. So we will just stay here, and
Oh,
if you can just turn off
okay.
your camera for a few moments.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
If you're there, if you can turn your camera on so I know you're there and we can get the meeting started. Madam Clerk, if you can let me know when we are live.
Through the chair, you are live streaming.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon and welcome to this meeting of the Finance and Corporate Services Committee for May 16th. Beginning on March 1st, 2022, the City of Kitchener has aligned with provincial changes to COVID-19 restrictions, and City Hall is now open for in-person services, but appointments are still being encouraged. The city remains committed to safety of our patrons and staff and continue to facilitate electronic meetings participation for members of the public. Those people interested in participating in meetings can register to participate electronically by completing the online delegation registration form at kitchener.ca/delegation or via email at delegation@kitchener.ca. For those who are interested in accessing the meeting live stream video, it is available at kitchener.ca/now. So we can now begin the meeting. We have 2 consent items. Can I have someone move the consent items? Moved by Councillor Ioannidis. Is there any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. We'll now move on to our discussion items. Our first item is the business licensing 3-year review and housekeeping amendments. And we have a 5-minute presentation from staff on this matter. Helen?
Thank you. Good afternoon, members of council. I'm here this afternoon to discuss the proposed changes to the current business licensing bylaw based on the 3-year review that was completed. Next slide, please. Some background on the reason we are doing the review. So the original bylaw was approved and came into effect in 2018. At that time, we committed to completing a 3-year review to ensure it was still meeting the needs of the community. Some of the changes at the time that were made to the original bylaw included changes to the fees, to the application, changing it from the applicant going department to department to automating it, changes to the regulations and requirements, and consolidating multiple bylaws into one comprehensive bylaw. The goal of the changes was to create clear regulations for applicants, to streamline our processes, and to support the community events and businesses. It's important to note that this bylaw does not include the lodging house, adult entertainment, alternative massage, or fireworks bylaw. The separate work is being done on those bylaws. As part of our process, we completed public consultation. We've been doing consultation throughout the 3 years, which include consulting with internal stakeholders, such as our bylaw planning, building, farmers market, economic development, and licensing teams. And we've worked with external stakeholders, including business owners, the Small Business Center, and public health, meeting with individual groups, tracking comments that have been submitted, and most recently completing the business licensing survey. As part of our review, we've been watching changing trends throughout other municipalities and locally, requests from business community, which include suggestions to the bylaw itself, but also changes to the physical application or the process, and any notes from staff and the public that we may have received. Next slide, please. Some highlights from the report would be the survey results. So the majority of the respondents were happy with the program, understood the requirements and the categories, and happy with the customer service that they were provided. Although the majority of our results were positive, we will continue to work with the comments that we've received to find areas of improvement. Some of the regulation changes that we've made is we would look at areas where we could add efficiencies with reduction to inspections and updating definitions for further clarity for applicants, which was a comment that was made in the survey. In addition, we proposed to expand the area for food trucks of where they're permitted to operate to make it permitted in the bylaw. This was based on the success of the pilot project over the last 2 years that allowed them to operate in residential zones throughout the summer. The farmers market vendors. So this will be a new category that is proposed based on feedback we've heard from the Kitchener market vendors. We worked really closely with the market staff to meet the needs of the market, as well as the vendors to assist with also attracting new potential vendors. So we created a new category to allow vendors to obtain short-term licenses in order to test the market. And we've also reduced the fees and the inspections for the regular market vendors. This will help the Kitchener Farmers Market retain their current vendors as well as attract new vendors that want to test the market. And lastly, the online business licensing. This is one of the most frequent feedbacks that we receive from our business community, and it came out in the survey as well, is the need for an online platform for businesses to be able to submit their applications as well as to pay by credit card. We're currently in the testing phase for the new online platform, and this will allow businesses to submit online, pay with their credit card, and be able to monitor the progress of their application online. Next slide, please. Some key changes that were made to the bylaw are some housekeeping amendments. As noted, we did hear feedback that approximately 77% of respondents find it easy to understand, but we continue to improve by updating our regulations and definitions to hope that we add more clarity and to be more concise on what categories businesses fall into. We've created new category classes of license, as noted, the farmers market one, but also a commercial kitchen category. This captures new types of businesses and mobile style businesses, and these are better suited to maintain public health and safety while meeting the needs of the businesses. Expanded permissions, so this is allowing the food trucks to continue to operate in the residential zones, as well as we've added a food truck location to RBJ Schlegel Park. And process improvements. We did hear back that it would be helpful to see some applications filled out and some toolkits to be created for new businesses, which staff will be working on to put online to give to businesses in person and to provide to the small business center. Next slide, please. And lastly, what we will do for the next steps is we will continue to work with our stakeholders to educate them on any changes that we've made to the bylaw and the processes, as well as we will send information and updates to the businesses that are affected by any of the changes. Staff are currently looking at applications and any changes that need to be made to internal systems and updating of the fees specifically to those businesses that are currently operating and will be able to pay a lower fee this year. We'll continue to support the local businesses and work with them to help educate businesses throughout training sessions and to provide toolkits to various departments that also work with businesses so that the information we're providing is consistent across the city. And lastly, we'll continue to monitor and track any emerging trends that are happening in our community. Thank you, and happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Thank you very much for your presentation. We do have a question. Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just wondering, are we having difficulty filling the stalls at the market? Or is it just because the vendors are asking for a better price that we decided we're going to give it to them?
Through you, Chair. It's not a matter of a difficulty filling the vendors, but we have had vendors that are not sure if the Kitchener market is the right avenue for them. So they would like the option to test the market without paying a full fee. So we've created a category that would allow them to come into the market up to 12 days at a lower fee to test. If they decide to become a permanent vendor and that works for the market and the vendor, then they would apply to become a permanent vendor at the market.
But even for the permanent vendors, the new fee has gone down from $200 to $75. Is that correct?
It has. So when we've reviewed this, one of the feedback that we heard from the market vendors was that the inspections that were tied to the previous fee in the program didn't really make sense for these vendors that were only operating 1 day a week and in a building that was already inspected. Not each individual vendor required those inspections that we previously had created for a food vendor. So based on the reduction of the inspections, it helped us reduce the fee for these vendors as well.
Okay, another question I had is on the refreshment vehicle Class C definition on page 5 of the report. I don't see what the difference is from the old to the new.
Sorry, just let me bring that up.
Like there's a part there highlight, but it looks to be the same in the old and the new.
Sorry, that the highlighted part is the part that is added in. It should not be on the previous one. There is no trailer in the previous definition of a refreshment vehicle, but we're seeing an increase to trailers being the new type of refreshment vehicle.
Okay. Okay. And my final question has to do with, you know, how do our fees compare to, say, the Waterloo market, which is probably more in keeping with the Kitchener market than the St. Jacobs market? Like, are the fees a lot higher at the Waterloo market than what we're proposing here, or are they about the same?
So I'm not aware that Waterloo has a stationary market. So I'm not sure if the St. Jacobs market, I don't know what their fees are. When we did the original one, the vendors at markets, it was comparable to some other municipalities that have permanent markets. But I'm not sure if Waterloo has fees for market vendors.
Well, maybe I've got the wrong term. I'm thinking the market across the street from the St. Jacobs market. I think they call that the Waterloo market. But okay, I mean, it'd be interesting to know, you know, are we way overpriced and that's why we need to bring it down, or because they're all within the region, right? Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your questions. Up next is Councillor Gazzola.
Helen, do you have any idea what I'm going to ask you about?
Does it have anything to do with swimming pools?
Yes, it does. You've done a tremendous job here with revising the bylaws and have picked up on everything, but I'm really disappointed that there's nothing here for the people in the ward that I represent that are really suffering with this problem. I can just expand a little bit so council know what I'm talking about, and we've been talking about for some time, is that in the ward that I represent, there are some homes, rather big homes with big swimming pools, and it appears that nowadays that people can't always seem to afford where they are, and they're started renting out their swimming pools on a hourly basis for people to come in as an Airbnb and rent the pool for an hour, 2 hours, and have a tremendous party with no concerns for their neighbors, for the people that live in the area. And after their party, they go out back to their nice quiet homes. And as a result, we need to put a bylaw in place that puts a brake on this. So I'm going to ask again, what can we do to do something to help those people? And is it possible to get something in for this summer?
Through you, Chair. So you, Councillor Gazzola, and I have had some conversations around the pool rentals, and we equated it similar to the short-term accommodations, which we currently do not license. And so we found that the pool rentals were outside of the scope of this specific review, as we are currently working parallel to the planning department and doing a lodging house review, and thought it would be better suited as part of that review, since we will be reviewing short-term accommodations. at the same time. That being said, we do still have tools in place to enforce the complaints that are coming in about these pools, which were mainly around noise. Last year, the complaints were taking in more of a reactive approach. As we discussed, Councillor Gazzola, we were happy to have a discussion with the owner of the property that we did receive the complaints about proactively to try and curb any of those complaints that may happen. In addition, we just want to continue to monitor this trend, as the last 2 years haven't allowed people to travel as safely or as freely due to COVID, and we're not sure that this emerging trend will be something that continues.
There's nothing I can say. I'm not satisfied with that. I know it's a real problem. I think it'll. I'm afraid it'll be a worse problem in this coming year, and it's really difficult when you have a whole neighborhood that is up in arms, and there's apparently nothing we can do. And I'm not blaming staff. I'm just trying to have everybody understand. What would it be like in your neighborhood if you encountered that? And that's my question, anyhow. And thank you for your response, and thank you for what you've done up to this point. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gazzola. Up next is Councillor Marsh.
Thank you very much, Chair Galloway-Seelock. Ms. Falaktu, first of all, thank you very much for all the work that you've done on this review. I know it's been much anticipated by the market vendors, and in particular, and they'll be happy to see reduced rate, because 3 years ago, as you know, the rate had a steep increase, and now we're looking to make it right-sized. So I'm just wondering, why would the fee for a business license for a first-time vendor be different from just a renewal? If the renewal includes a site plan that's exactly identical to the one that had been reviewed in detail previously, can you explain, since we're doing a cost recovery model, how are we having the same costs for a renewal versus a new one?
Through you, Chair. Just for clarification, Councillor Marsh, this specific to the farmers market vendors. So because it is a cost recovery and there is still an element of inspections that need to be completed because it is food and there is food safety, and we will be working with our partners at Public Health. Although we've reduced the fees, because we don't do the inspections for fire and planning, which were previously attached to it, there will still be the annual inspection of Public Health, ensuring that all the vendors are still up to food safety inspection code.
Does the city pay Public Health to go in and do that, or do we somehow recover the costs for Public Health?
We don't pay for Public Health to do that, but staff administers the paperwork for the businesses that are applying and do the back and forth between Public Health. So this helps cover that cost administratively as well.
Okay. And then how is is Public Health inspector, are Public Health inspectors paid for just through the region's budget and not by the users specifically?
That's right.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'm very supportive of the solution you've come up with. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your questions. Up next is Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you, Chair Galloway-Seelock, and thanks, Ms. Falaktu, for your report. I just wanted to follow up with the food truck portion, and what kind of engagement did we have with that in regards to moving the pilot forward?
Through you, Chair, what kind of engagement did we have with the food trucks? So So we have emailed out to the food trucks throughout the pilot and followed up after the pilot concluded to see what some of the feedback that we received from the food trucks, if it was a benefit for them to be operating in these areas. We've only received positive feedback from the food trucks. One suggestion that was made from the food trucks was the original pilot only allowed for 2 hours to be parked there, and we were advised that 2 hours was not enough time because it takes approximately 45 minutes to set up a food truck. So we did adjust that based on feedback to the 3-hour maximum versus the 2 to allow for that setup time.
Okay, thank you for that. And Chair Galloway Silak, when the time's appropriate, I'm prepared to move the recommendation, and I have some comments when it's appropriate.
Okay, thank you. I was going to ask for a mover, so I appreciate that. I don't see any more questions, so thank you, Helen, for your presentation and for all your work. And so now we'll move into comments. Councillor Ioannidis, did you want to go ahead?
Sure. Just want to thank staff and Ms. Vlachtu for all the great work. I really appreciate everything that's gone into this review. In particular, I see the market rates, fees is something that is I think is a much needed a change, and I think it will give the market an opportunity to further explore new vendors and to keep the market more viable. So I do commend on that. And just wanted to make one final comment with regards to the food trucks. I remember, I would say probably 9 years ago or 10 years ago, how much of a uproar bringing food trucks was into the community, and the amount of effort that staff had put into, and to see it finally come to the full circle that it is today is quite amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ioannidis. Up next is Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Galloway Silak. Helen, thanks to you and your team. It's really encouraging and great to see the engagement that you had with those who use the service, and see us respond to it to improve it like this, and excuse me, make it easier for people to get through things and do business in our city. So great work on that. Happy to support this.
Thank you very much. Up next is Councillor Singh.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Galloway Silak, and thank you to Helen, and of course, all the appropriate staff that have led this work forward with the consultation and the pilot projects to proceed. In every context, in the foreseeable future, any policy that we put forward has to be looked at through the lens of recovery out of the pandemic. And of course, here we're helping our business communities. At the same time, we are ensuring that we are helping to return to some sense of normalcy by seeing more flurry of activity happening in our neighborhoods. And I think food trucks definitely help assist with that, along with supporting events, and at the same time giving a wider array of food choices in our streets. I think Councillor Ioannidis hit it on the nail on the head in referencing the level of opposition that we had years ago and where we're at right now when it comes to food trucks. Food trucks were a huge benefit and assistance during the pandemic, in that little bit of a relief of seeing that food truck at a community center or our neighborhood church, and a way for people to be able to get out. They helped us get through that, and they need to be part of the future recovery program as well, and integrated within our overall, food choices, as well as just small business as a category. And I'm glad to see that we're opening up and making it more flexible and easier. So thank you for that.
Thank you. And that appears to be all the comments. I too just want to again thank staff for all your work on this. It's very much appreciated. With that, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to our next item, which is the capital financing and debt policy. And there's no presentation, but Debbie and Ryan are here to answer any questions. Does anyone have any questions? Do I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Chapman. Any some questions?
Yeah, I'm happy to move it, but I do have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
In one of the key highlights of the new policy, it says debt will be considered as a means to finance new non-recurring infrastructure requirements, acquisitions, design, construction, etc. So would this, my question is, would this include the acquisition of new parkland in the UGC area and the downtown core?
Jonathan, did you want to answer that?
So through the chair, certainly debt could be utilized to acquire assets. That could be one option. Really what we're trying to highlight within the policy is just potential uses for debt. We're not prescribing what we might use debt for, but typically we'd want to use it for strategic purposes. So where we have funding in reserve for parkland acquisition that allow us to do it, we look for that first before we would consider something like debt. But certainly as a tool, it could be considered for any type of strategic either acquisition or new assets that we might be building, where something, there's not enough funding to proceed with would be some of those considerations. But that's why it's outlined as one of the options for considering debt.
Okay, that's great to hear. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Up next is Councillor Singh.
Yeah, Madam Chair, this is definitely crucial policy or strategic policy that will determine how we invest within our community going forward. Seeing that this is the end of this term of council and with the upcoming election, would staff, update the new council after November, or take feedback on this, on the recommendations that are within this policy?
So through the chair, this policy in particular is something we've been working on and had ready to come to council within the past 2 years. As part of the budget process, we always look at the debt related issue that would be part of the capital forecast. And so that's something that we would continue to proceed with. I think what this policy does, though, is it just formalizes what we currently are doing in terms of our approach. And so I would recommend that it be approved today. And certainly, we will be talking about debt through the regular annual budget updates as we normally do, and as we talk about how we finance capital projects.
No, I support that that step forward. We do absolutely have to approve the recommendation. I think they're a good direction as laid out by staff, but I think it's prudent for us to continually relook at the policy as well. So having intermittent time periods that are addressed within the policy that we will look at in 2 years or 4 years or whatever, because the financial landscapes continue to evolve and change. So we have to adapt accordingly. So if that's a part of the approach, then I'm supportive of that. And if it's not, it's something perhaps staff can look into integrating within the approved policy.
So through the chair, that's certainly something we do with all our policies in terms of looking at them on a regular basis. So typically that's 5 years. If there's a need to revisit a policy, we can certainly do that at any time. And so, but we would definitely be committed to regular updates in terms of that cycle with all the policies that we have put forward for council.
Okay, thank you for your questions. Up next is Councillor Gazzola.
Thank you. Can you just briefly tell me what exactly is different than from what we've done in the past 5 to 10 years? Is there anything startling different in this policy that you're asking us to approve?
Debbie, I think you're on mute.
Through you, the chair. No, there's nothing startling different from what we've been doing. This is just putting in writing our current practice and policies.
So why, if there's nothing new, what is the necessity of putting it into writing like this? What does that do? You're not recommending anything different. Have you had problems in the past with carrying out what we do? Or I'm not clear as to why it's here.
Jonathan?
So through the chair, as part of the long-term financial plan, we identified a number of policies that we would develop as best practice through that plan. And this was one of those that was identified. It is a best practice to have policies that are written out and outline in terms of use of debt. And so that's why it is in front of you today. But as Andre said, it is basically formalizing what we currently do. The one thing that is added in the policy is it does reference the debt limits that the province sets in terms of how much we are allowed to borrow. And so we think it's prudent for us to have a policy that formalizes not only recognizing that, but also setting our own limits to show that we're being responsible in terms of how we utilize debt as a strategic tool versus something that we would just do out of the normal course. And so that's what's reflected in the policy.
All right, thank you.
Okay, that appears to be all the questions that we have, and it's been moved by Councillor Chapman. Is there any comments? Seeing none, I just want to thank staff for their work on this. I think it's a great policy, and I look forward to it moving forward. With that, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. That was our last item for Finance and Corporate Services. So do I have someone who wants to move adjournment? Moved by Councillor Singh. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We are done Finance and Corporate Services. I believe we have until 3:30 and a different link for Community and Infrastructure Services. So we'll see you in half an hour.